Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
So, M19 spoilers are already dribbling and drabbing in.
Here they come.
Seems like we just had Dominaria, but already some exciting new stuff.
Definitely. Like, in particular, well, I don't know, not even in particular, because there's just oodles and oodles of cards. But if I could run by you the Militia Bugler, I mean, first of all, it's a bugler. So already, like, we're on the right track, right?
He's got a horn. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And while it is true that he blows his horn, he's, I think, going to present some interesting puzzles as well. He's the tuna white 2/3 Vigilance. When he enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with power 2 or less from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
Wow, so he's like... He's like...
Glintless Crane?
I was thinking kind of like Gonti for yourself. That's what I was thinking, right? But less, right? So Gonti costs 4. He only costs 3. Same size as Gonti. He hasn't, Deathtouch is probably a little bit better than Vigilance, but you build your deck...
A little.
Yeah, a little bit better. Like,
a lot.
Kill a 12/12 dinosaur, or, sit back and loosen combat, but you got in for 2. But yeah, but he costs a full mana less, right? But, you build your deck in a certain way. This card is certainly going to see play somewhere, right?
I mean, isn't this a lot like a sort of Glintless Crane of creatures with power 2 or less? Right? Like, if you just play with a critical mass of creatures with power 2 or less, then, I mean, when you just drop this, it's, like, if you're reliably hitting, it's much better than Seagate Oracle.
Well, yeah, actually, that's really interesting, right? Like, just because they have power 2 or less doesn't mean that has any restriction on their casting cost. For example, you could chain Bugler into Bugler, right? Because Bugler only has 2 power.
Right, but you can also, I mean, you can go even bigger and do stuff like the Angel. Instead of to give your team +1/+1 and make extra servos, because you can get a lot more than an actual 2 power if you have a card that, as long as its printed power is 2.
Sure.
Perhaps the closest comparison is Court Hussar, right? Like, Court Hussar was a star.
I love Court.
And this guy's... Oh, absolutely. You were an early vocal advocate for Court Hussar.
I won states with Court Hussar that one year.
Yeah. The Michael J. Glory Day. And Militia Bugler.
The one day in 2006. I was the best non-pro player in the state of New York.
Dude, this was Court Hussar getting a 2nd point of strength. Like, if you have a 2nd point of power, that's a big deal. 2/3 Vigilance is a lot better than a 1/3 Vigilance. And this is like getting you your... Now, granted, you can't get a land. But, like, getting your choice of 4 is so good.
I mean, plus there's guys who have 3 power that have printed power of 1, right? Like, that's a thing. Right? Or you can get, like, Walking Ballista. What's its printed power? 0?
0.
Doesn't matter, nope. Right? It could have 100 power.
It's 0.
And it's 0. So you could... The fact that you could tutor for, I guess on the subject of Glintless Crane, Walking Ballista is a card that... I know it's been around for a while, but I'm feeling that card right now. I think it's one of the best, most variable, most skill testing cards you can play in Standard in a variety of different strategies, and Militia Bugler can get it for you.
Yep. Do you think there's any chance people play Militia Bugler in some sort of I guess, I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking of, like, just how many creatures, like Metallic Mimic and all those different lords. Like, you know how, like, Legion, like the Vampire Lord is technically a 2, and Metallic Mimic is a 2, and I'm just wondering if this might be a part of some sort of a tribal deck, even when it's off tribe.
Oh, sure. I mean, well, it's a human and a soldier, right? There are a lot of folks who like soldiers, and there are a fair number of folks who like humans. And then plus you have, I mean, even in the humans tribe, like in Modern, right, where humans is pushed, 11 out of 10, there are non-human decks that go into that, right? So they'll play an illusion, for example. right? That is synergistic with their deck.
I kind of think that Militia Bugler could show up in that humans deck.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Being able to go find Thalia's lieutenant. Oh, hell yeah!
Well, the other thing is, at some point, if you've got like 2 lands in play, right, 3 lands in play, you can probably tick up your Aether Vial, right, and he becomes pseudo free, and he's just tutoring for most of the stuff in your deck. Like, there's very few cards in that deck outside of like Manta Rider or something that it wouldn't hit, right? So it's gonna hit freebooters, it's gonna hit meddling mages. There's such a Thalia herself. There's such high impact cards in that deck that have low power. Maybe this is a great card to play after sideboarding, like maybe in a Human's Mirror, where you actually just want, it's such an even fight to begin with, just like to get more tonnage, right? Maybe that's a thing. You know how some Humans decks were playing Collected Company, but that's kind of really off theme, right? Like it's a spell. Those decks typically didn't have access to Aether Vial. All right, instead of dialing up the humans, maybe this is a thing, right? This set card is actually kind of Collected Company-ish to me, which is like it has a really good card advantage capability, but you have to put some constraint in your deck to get the payoff.
Yep. And actually, topically, Mentor of the Meek, 2 and a white, 2/2 human soldier. This one's a reprint. Whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1. If you do, draw a card. So it's looking like there's an emerging sort of sub-theme here. Like Mentor of the Meek being another enabler for decks playing power 2 or less. Kind of surprised to see these 2 cards both in the same set, but whatever. What are your... go ahead. Yeah.
Both of these cards seem like they might find homes, right? Or they might be playable. But I think that they have something else in common, which is like if the format is foot to the floor fast, and I don't mean just like offensively fast, like everybody's just dropping 2/1s for 1. Because if everyone's just dropping 2/1s or 3/1s for 1, these cards are actually pretty great, right? I mean fast in the sense of like they're tapping all their mana in the early turns for proactive plays, even if those plays are not just nakedly offensive. Like things like a Heart of Kirin, which plays offense and defense, or a Goblin Chain Whirler, right, which is an offense-defense card. It's not like the most offensive card, right? It's just a really great way to spend 3 mana, right? I think that these cards are at a disadvantage because they're a little expensive. They're giving you a lot of value, but they require a lot of mana output in return, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
But it depends. Like if the format's all like 2/2 knights, for example, right? Where we see a lot of that 2/2 and 3/2 knights from either Knight of X, Knight of Y, History Benalia type knight decks. If it's more along those lines, cards like this are actually very valuable in the format, right? Like they actually both work really well with printed knights. Both of them work with both of the knights, right? That were printed in the last set.
Out of the 2-drop knights, yeah.
The 2-drop knights, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, do you think either of these are they going to actually contribute to a Dusk to Dawn, Resurgence? Like Dusk to Dawn obviously cares about you having creatures with power 2 or less a lot, right?
So right now, I just say there are a lot of potentially interesting things that people could be doing. But if they're about relatively small creatures, a fundamental thing is going to have to change in Standard for any of these strategies to really be unlocked. Unless there's some kind of crazy payoff that's better than just a little incremental card advantage for 3 mana. That would be my guess.
Why?
Because
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just curious.
Because both just to look at these kind of cards, right? They're both outclassed at the same mana on size to what we're seeing at 3 mana right now. And I don't mean just Goblin Chain Whirler, but Goblin Chain Whirler is obviously the most egregious example of this. So, if these 2 power creatures that Militia Bugler and Mentor of the Meek are hooking up with have 1 toughness, for example, it's going to be bad times. But they're also behind against cards like the green one, the Steel Leaf pal. What's his name?
Is it Steel Leaf Champion?
Yeah, Steel Leaf Champion, rather. Sorry. The 5/4 guy, right? So, like I said, there's certainly a potential open for cards like this, but right now there's incentives that are just way more proactive for a similar amount of mana. And I think that right now, because every card that's getting played in Standard pretty much, like at least in the creature decks, is just builds so much momentum onto the momentum you already have, that there's just not necessarily breathing room for incremental advantages. And if you're going to look at a strategy like that, like Green-Black offers a similar thing, right? Like if you think about the Snake, right, and its interactions with cards like Rishkar or Walking Ballista, like it does a very similar thing to both of these cards. Not the same thing, obviously, right? But it's building material. Like both of these cards are building material, even though it's not like cardboard material. But at a slightly smaller mana cost.
Sure. Dude, it's switching gears a little bit. But what do you think of Infernal Judgment in Modern?
Ooh, love it. Love it.
Yeah.
This is such a cool card.
I thought of you as soon as I saw this one. This is just such the type of little edge you like to get out of your very efficient sideboard cards for the right metagame.
Oh yeah, this is like a. I was gonna say.
So this is black for an instant. Exile target colorless creature. You gain life equal to its power.
Yeah, I mean this card is. I was gonna say it's a scalpel because it's fairly narrow in how you want to use it, but it's also like a hammer. Like you can hit like a 5. You can hit like a 12. You can hit, there are a lot of really good.
You're not going to really hit 15s.
You're not going to hit, but probably not going to hit 15s. But you can hit a 12. You can hit an 11. You can hit a 7, a 5. There are all kinds of things you can hit for 1. You're getting a huge bonus out of it. I mean, if some of those guys have, they work from the graveyard, not anymore, right? Like if you hit a World Breaker with this, it's not going to be able to come back and do its shenanigans. This is a great solution to a Wormcoil Engine, right? Like Wormcoil Engine is a problem for some decks, right? This card is a great answer to, Eldrazi, artifact creatures, devoid creatures, and we see all those kind of, types of creatures.
All right, so there's some promise. There's some promise to this thing. But, I got a couple issues with it. First of all, not hitting Master of Ethereum is brutal. Right? Like, that is actually... Right? I mean,
it doesn't
unfortunate.
Really hit Arcbound Ravager very well. Right?
It's not that good at hitting Arcbound Ravager.
It scares Arcbound Ravager into different directions, maybe, but it doesn't really get it.
Yeah, but everything could do that if you really wanted to. And then, it's not like you want this against the 2/2 protection from all colors. Right? And it's not like you really want this against Reality Smasher.
I would take it against Reality Smasher a lot of the time.
It's not like you really want it, though.
No, I mean, I don't know, man. You're talking to somebody who's just perfectly happy casting a Chain to the Rocks when I know the opponent might have Oblivion Stone and or Allvis Dust. But I still like it, It's just, time and tool for the job. But I could tell you, I like this card a lot because it's an instant, right? So it can hit Blink Moths and Ink Moths, right? That's cool.
It can.
Right? It can hit those, and those guys often have real big power, right? Like you might just be not getting hit for a lot of poison, and for 1 mana. I like that, right? Like they often commit to a under the assumption that it's hard to hit those things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is a narrow card. Don't get me wrong. I think this is very much a late Grand Prix, kind of maybe a PTQ-ish card, not a Pro Tour card, probably.
Well, I don't know. Now that the Pro Tours, if enough of the Pro Tours are just 2 months after the set has come out.
You're right.
Okay,
yeah, so I guess the Pro Tour is just the same as, metagame-wise, is very similar to maybe a Starseed event now, so who knows?
there's a new red card, 7 red, 7 red, red, red. So 10 mana. Apex of Power. 10 mana. It's a sorcery. Exile the top 7 cards of your library. Until end of turn, you may cast non-land cards exiled this way. And if a spell cast from your hand, if this spell is cast from your hand, add 10 mana of any one color to your mana pool.
So this card really is the apex of... I mean, like, if you ever ask yourself, well, what do I get for 10, right? You know? I think you were the one when Emrakul the Aeon's Torn was first spoiled, you said something on Twitter, I think, but this is obviously years ago now, like, what, pushing... How many years ago was that? Pushing 10 years, right? It's a while, right? 2010-ish, I want to say? 2009? You said, well, that's what you get for 15, you know? So... This is like, and you were right. I mean, people have cast that card for 15. They've cast it for 3. They've cast it for 4. They've cast it for 5. But they've cast it for 15, and it's been great at 15, right? So this card, I think, is going to be great at 10, and it's going to be great at Cheaty, right? So, I mean, you can Apex into Apex. It's the first thing I thought, right? Like, oh, wow, I'm flipping over 7
sort
cards. I'm going to hit an Apex a lot of the time.
But if you hit another Apex, you don't get all the mana.
No, you get
you
it
actually
for free,
have to cast. No, you don't. You have to pay for it.
No, you cast non-land cards. Oh, you don't. You have to pay for all the ones that are exiled from Apex for their mana cost. I misread this originally.
That's why I don't like it that much.
I thought the ones that you exiled originally were free, right? No, you just get mana. Oh yeah, so this isn't even very beneficial unless you cast it from your hand.
Is it? This is just a 10-mana time spiral.
Yeah, it's a cool. I think it's still a powerful card.
Sure, I mean time spiral's not weak, but make sure that your expectation is a little bit closer to 10-mana time spiral instead of 10-mana Mind's Desire.
And it's not Storm.
You know,
yeah, that's a good point, right? I was thinking like it's not Storm. So even if you cast this out of your hand, you're probably doing it with rituals, right? Like I don't know. I can't imagine a Tron deck going red for this. Maybe I'm wrong. There's no real reason for Tron to be green anymore, right? I mean,
there's no reason that you would do this. What if you just played like Kozilek or Ulamog or Ugin or some other card that's like super dope?
Yeah, so they're probably not doing
you could do this. You could do this. It's just coming up with triple red is not the most trivial. I mean, maybe this card is sweet. It's definitely sweet, but maybe the card is good. It's just that it sure smells like Win More to me, but who knows? Maybe it's...
I've actually cooled on this. Thank you for explaining this one to me. Obviously, this is a new card. Like, I thought it was, you get them for free to start with, and if you don't, this is so...
No, that would be dope. That would be really powerful.
It would be the Apex.
Yeah, that would be... Actually, even if this gets countered, however, you still get the 10 mana.
Well, that's...
It's cute. That's something. That's not nothing.
Well, I don't know. Maybe
so there's a new Goblin
in your back pocket. Why would I just want to try it that way?
Goblin Instigator is a new one. Good.
Oh no!
You still have? So Goblin Instigator is a new. So Goblin Instigator is 1 in a red for a 1/1, and when it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 red Goblin creature token. So, like, you know how they use, like, there's been many times where we've had those, like 1 in red, you get 2 1/1 tokens.
Sure.
Well, this is a slightly different twist on the story. It's a 1/1 that gives you a 1/1, which then means that they don't have the same name, which can be useful against if there's some kind of Bio Blight type of card. But second of all, it can get blinked and brought back from the graveyard and various little synergies like that. But in particular, I think the Goblin Tribe has been hungry for some ways to come up with some amount of playable goblins.
Oh yeah, I think this card could be really cool. I mean, obviously, playing any 1 toughness creatures in Standard right now, you gotta think about it for a second before you include them. Like everything, right? You're thinking about twice before you're playing the card at all currently. But there's no reason why this wouldn't see wide play in Standard. There's like worse versions of this have seen wide played in Standard and in other colors in white, right? We see all kinds of servo expeditions.
And without even having Yeah, without even necessarily needing Goblin synergies.
Oh, yeah.
Just to make 2 tokens.
This gets all the bonuses from Goblin Tribe stuff, right? Like, this is certainly in some situations, right? If you're gonna play, like, you know, any kind of mana enabling lords, haste type lord type stuff, this is far superior to, like, any of, like, the 2/1 or 2/2 type goblins that people have played in the past for 2. Right, like there's all kinds of like this guy can't block or this guy's 2/1 or whatever that have found their way playably into decks, depending on the constraints of a format. This card could potentially be 4 or more power for 2 mana because of how goblins work, right? Instead of 3 or more power, just 2 power for 2, and then plus multiple bodies, like you said. There's all kinds of cool stuff you can do. In the past, we've seen synergies with stuff like Greater Gargadon or all kinds of stuff that exploits having multiple bodies for a single card.
So, dude, green. If you want to get multiple bodies, I guess it's not even multiple bodies, but man, here's a Michael Flores card. Elvish Rejuvenator, the 2 and a green, 1/1. Elf that when it enters the battlefield, you look at the top 5 cards of your library and you may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield tapped and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
This is one of the cards I really wanted to talk about. Are you
cool on this one?
I don't like this. I mean, when I say I don't like this card, keep in mind I also didn't like Pilgrim's Eye when I first saw it. So take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. But like, I just look at this and I say to myself, is Wood Elves so overpowered? It's just the question.
But Wood Elves can only get forests.
Yeah, but 2 things. Wood Elves generally always hit, and then, Wood Elves got you what you were looking for.
No, only if what you were looking for is a forest. This guy actually fixes your colors.
Yeah, I mean...
Besides, it's not like Wood Elves illegal.
No. Of course I understand what you're saying from that standpoint. I'm saying, like, they're obviously riffing on models on a lot of these cards that are similar to models we've seen before, right? And when I say I'm cool on this, I could totally imagine myself playing this on turn 2 with the Llanowar Elves and then blowing my opponent out on the 3rd turn, right? Like, that's going to happen a lot in Standard. Unless you're getting blown up by a Chain Whirler, this thing is going to potentially lead to some of the most explosive starts in Standard, right? Like, you can go like Llanowar Elves, this guy, Hour of Promise or Vraska's something, the next turn it's going to be great. But I don't know. Like, I'm going to hate it if I miss. I guess I won't miss that often. You're looking at 5 cards, so if you get it on turn 2, you're gonna hit very, very frequently.
And this is actually reliable acceleration. I mean, imagine this into Verdurous Gearhulk.
Oh, wow. That is, it's good. There's a lot of things you can play on turn 3 if you're in this that are great.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, like, if you play this... Now, granted, I think the Chain Whirler problem is a very big hole in this one's play experience. However, if you play the Rejuvenator on turn 3... Not only do you have a reliable way to play the Gearhulk a turn ahead of schedule that isn't vulnerable to the same removal as everything normally is, but you have a body that your opponent doesn't have the incentive to kill unless they have a Chain Whirler.
Yeah, I mean, are you saying that because, like, the card is otherwise so inoffensive once it comes into play, like, after you've just got... It's all right, it's cashed in its card advantage. Now you've just got this 1/1 Elf Druid that doesn't tap for mana, doesn't fly, isn't a legend, isn't colorless. Like, it's just they're just have an incentive to ignore it. Is that the thing?
It's like no. I just mean that, like, okay, if you've got a Llanowar Elf in play, it's gonna eat an Abrade a lot more often than if you had a 1/1 token.
Sure,
right.
Sure.
And so if they tap out and spend their turn doing something else, now you've got a body that's actually still in play when you play 5 mana, and you can drop your Gearhulk and suit it up.
Yep.
Either way.
Yeah, I buy that.
It's okay. It's just that it has 1 toughness, so obviously it's kind of banned.
I mean, if this weren't such a Chain Whirler format, obviously I would be much less cool on this card. I mean, I have... joyfully cast Wood Elves in the past. Like, absolutely with great fervor, won a PTQ with Wood Elves in my deck. But it's just, I'm just cool on 1 toughness creatures right now, especially ones that cost 3.
Well, so here's another thing you could potentially ramp into if you just really, 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 really wanted to.
If I really like forests.
Gigantosaurus.
Yeah.
Gigantosaurus loves the forest. He's just 10/10 vanilla for GG.
Yeah, I like this card. I would have liked it more with Trample. I don't know. This card's probably pretty great. If you're in the neighborhood of 5 forests, this card's probably good. Like, I got so much respect for Galta, testing for the last couple of weeks. I was watching one of the best players in the world in trying to make his way back onto the Pro Tour in a Stompy matchup, and there was just a Galta on the Stompy mirror match rather. There was a Galta on the other side of the table, and I'm just like, well, that's a problem with Stompy. If somebody else casts a Galta, it's just there, right? 12/12. It's just probably going to get you. Like, a 10/10 is good, and for this power to casting cost ratio, can't be beat. It's not asking a whole lot. There's tons of decks that can make 5G, right? They're not shy about G.
Dude, what about Regisaur Alpha? This guy's a dinosaur.
Yeah, I am a buyer on Gigantosaurus. Super a buyer on this card. This will get you to Galta for 2. 1 card gets you to Galta for 2 mana. And there are one of the play patterns with just an offensive, green deck right now is just wave after wave of threats under the assumption that the last wave got killed, right? And half the time, it's getting killed by putting additional forests into play. So this is fine. This card is absolutely fine.
It looks okay to me, but keep in mind it's the same cost as Verdurous Gearhulk. So, like, at a more and it's more restrictive actually, but a more restrictive cost, you get +2/+2, but you lose the ability to spread out the bodies. You lose the haste aspect. You lose the counter synergies.
You get some things too, though, right? So
you do. You get, +2/+2, and it's not an artifact.
Yeah. I think those are 2 big ones, though, right now, because the +2/+2 is not trivial, especially like when you cast Verdurous Gearhulk and the opponent just, even if you have 2 bodies in play, like sometimes they just have a winding. I'm sorry, not a winding a walking ballista, and they can just kill your team, or they have like a removal spell and 2 removal spells in hand, and then you just have the Gearhulk and it dies to an Abrade or a Brontodon. Like, I think like this guy is resistant to highly commonly played removal, right? Like Brontodon and
red removal.
Yeah, like every red deck is packing 2 to 4 Abrade's main deck. Most of the green decks are packing 4 Brontodon's main deck. In fact, this guy's best buddies with Brontodon, right? Like, decks that are just already plausibly playing Brontodon, maybe this gives you a reason, even if you're not a dinosaurs deck, right, to play the Rampant Growth card that is good with dinosaurs. Like, if you have this guy in Brontodon, is that enough to play that Rampant Growth? Because that card's real powerful if you can get it in your deck.
Yeah, I like the Rampant Growth, and I think this guy is a pretty nice little boost to that. That's like an advantage it has over Verdurous Gearhulk,
Yeah, so like if you have this card and Brontodon, maybe you have this card, Brontodon, and Regisaur Alpha, just for sake of argument, right? And those are the only dinosaurs in your deck. Are you now in the market for the Rampant Growth card instead of Servant of the Conduit? Because most decks are playing Servant of the Conduit as their secondary accelerator, or a lot of decks, I should say. Like, you see Stompy decks with Servants of the Conduit, you see Ramp decks with Servant of the Conduit, Green-White's playing Servant of the Conduit. I think, like, that card's way better card than Servant of the Conduit, if you can get it into your deck. Right? Servant of the Conduit is unreliable in the mid-game, and it's not an impressive body. This is coming from someone who played Servant of the Conduit yesterday.
Okay. So you're saying you're a real reliable source.
I honestly thought my deck was great, and I thought Servant of the Conduit was good. I'm just saying I think that card's better.
Yeah, I think so too. If you've got enough dinosaurs, Cowley Hydra or Gigantosaurus, which one is the better obnoxious amounts of green mana card?
Man, I am salty on Cowley Hydra because it's a just personal story on Cowley Hydra. That card was prohibitively expensive in Standard when it first came out. But Josh Ravis is like, this is definitely the card we're playing in the Invitational. Buy a set. So I bought a set, right? And he's like, we're definitely not playing that deck. Sorry. But then I just gave my set to Huey Jensen, and he made top 8 of whatever the Starseed event was the next week. But I don't know. I think this card must be better because I never played the Colony Hydras even once. After I think they were incredibly expensive in Standard. I can't even fathom. So I'm salty about that. So I'm going with Gigantosaurus. Anyway, roundabout answer.
All right, that's fair. Alternative 5-drop, Vivien Reid.
Ooh, something new to talk about.
3 green.
Walker.
Yes, they're real discreet. Reid. Got it. 3 green. It's a Planeswalker that costs 3 GG, of course. You know, like the other Nissa, but it starts with 5 loyalty.
What do you mean other Nissa? This is named Reid.
I know, but the
Planeswalker, great hair.
The Nissa that costs 5 is the one I mean. Anyway, Vivien Reid, 3 GG for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. Her +1 ability. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or land from among them and put it into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your in rain order. And then it's her -3 ability is destroy target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. And then finally, -8 ultimate, you get an emblem with creatures you control, get +2/+2, and have vigilance, trample, and indestructible.
So, I could just see this card being spectacular in a wide variety of decks, in a wide variety of formats. This card, you probably wouldn't play it in just like a mono aggro deck like Stompy in the main deck, but you certainly might play it after sideboarding, right? Like we've seen Stompy decks playing, is it Crush of Canopies? Is that the name one that kills flying creatures? Yeah. So they play that card, right? Like, this card is way better than that, right? They can get to 5 because they're playing stuff like Carnage Tyrants and Sky Sovereigns, right? So they can play this. This thing shoots possibly multiple liras out of the sky, and if it sits there, you're just gonna. This is like. It's gonna sound a little heavy-handed, but given the composition of these types of green decks, this is like the green Teferi, right? Like. You just sit there, draw. One of its abilities is draw a card. One of the abilities is kill a threat. The other one is, I mean, I think the emblem is probably not really that. I'm not in it for the emblem, but both.
No, you don't think so?
No, the other 2 abilities are fantastic.
Yeah, but they're not. It's like worse than even when it lines up right. It's worse than Teferi at each step of the way.
Oh yeah, but this is a green card, not an Azorius card, right? Like.
Here's what I like. I like this against Lyra Dawnbringer. I agree with you. That's a great play.
I mean, I can imagine many decks. Green-black ramp, green-red monsters, mono-green Stompy, green-blue Stompy, just sideboarding 4 of these. They are there, right? Like, this is a great alternate payoff.
You could do a lot worse than this against Glorybringer. And even though it's like you have to have something else to finish the job against the Phoenix, it could be part of a plan. And the ability to use Vivien Reid to destroy artifacts or enchantments, That means you have extra answers to cast out, extra answer to Torrential Gearhulk, extra answer to whatever, like, I mean, it's not like you want to blow up your opponent's Walking Ballista, but like sometimes you don't have that many options if you're playing a green deck, and this can actually come down as a proactive threat. I don't think this one's rate is like super pushy, but I think it's going to be a solid role player. I think it does some things reasonably that you want done.
Absolutely agree with you. It's not like an insane rate. Like you're not. This isn't C.
Like it would be weird. Right? Like, it would be weird to compare it to Teferi, for instance.
Okay,
but
so it was obvious, I hope, that I was like creating a little bit of a stretch, but that is still relatable, right? Even if it's a stretch here. But this card is just vastly better than that Canopies card that people are playing 4 copies of right now. This is like a game winner in a lot of matchups. You just land this thing. It's not like it's really Teferi in that, like Teferi wins the game by itself. But if you land Vivien Reid and certain opponents don't answer it, it will beat them. right? Even if it beats them with the emblem, it will beat them, right? Like,
oh yeah,
you can't just let the opponent have a personal Howling Mine for 4 turns if half
also,
your deck
this
is just
not a Howling
drawing.
Mine. This is a lot better than a Howling Mine.
It's much better than a Howling Mine. It's like
being able to hit a creature or land. That is so much better than a Howling Mine. You're going to get some pretty good selection.
Yeah, like, I don't know, Gonti, Brontodon, Chupacabra,
the Scarab God, whatever.
I don't think the Scarab God is going to play with Vivien Reid that often.
I do.
I bet.
I do. Oh, I do. I think so. Sultai already does, like, they play Nissa 5, right?
Sure.
I like Vivien Reid better than Nissa in terms of, like, doing what you actually need done.
You know a card is going to be gotten by this that's going to matter a lot in a lot of matchups, from blue-white to mono-green?
What's that?
Walking Ballista. Vivien Reid can get Walking Ballista, and if you've got like 6+ mana to land it and it resolves, and in like if you have this card in your deck and you're interested in grinding against somebody's resources, the ability to get a Walking Ballista and or get the fuel to keep making the Walking Ballista bigger is just going to win the game by itself a lot of the time. Absolutely massive advantage against people who are trying to stop tapped creatures, attacking creatures, or are playing 1/1 creatures. Right? Like, that is... It's just a huge opportunity there.
Sure. What about Fountain of Renewal, man? This is a little bit better than Fountain of Youths usually are, right? Just 1 cost artifact at the beginning of your upkeep, you gain a life, and you can pay 3 and sacrifice it to draw a card.
I think this card's fantastic. I don't know that I would play it in... let me put it this way. It's not fantastic in the sense that you play it in every deck, right? It's fantastic in the sense that there are decks or there are situations where you play this deck, with this card rather, that it is remarkably meaningful and highly cost efficient. Yeah. Like, I'm not sure how annoying this is to a red aggro deck. Or, like, maybe if you have, like, multiple... like, there's certainly going to be situations where, like, some maniac with a Whir of Invention has, like, 3 Fountain of Renewals in play against a red deck, and they're just like, I can't win. Right? Like, I'm just doing all this stuff, and they're just sitting there with their Fountain of Renewal in play, and they're just, like... You know, they're just trading cards with me, but they're gaining like 2-3 life a turn. And if they actually get in trouble, they're just going to draw cards, and their cards can be better than this. And plus, this is a mana engine in their deck.
I mean, imagine if you were playing against this with your Lava Spike deck in Modern, right? Like, say the Grixis deck puts down a Fountain of Renewal. I mean, first of all, they would love to have a source of life gain against you, but the fact that they could even sacrifice this in response to you trying to smash to smithereens it.
Oh, sure. So... here's the thing. If you think about the Fountain Renewal in that context specifically, if you play Fountain Renewal on turn 1, it's not like an Ivory Tower in that it's contingent on how many cards you have in hand, right? Like, part of the things that made Ivory Tower so, like, they restricted it, right, was that it's overpowered in some context, but you actually had to play a certain way to cash it in. You play Fountain Renewal on turn 1, by turn 6, which the game will probably drag to against a Lava Spike deck because you had the Fountain Renewal, you've already countered 2 cards, maybe 3 cards. Just by having it in play on turn 1, you've literally countered 2, if not 3 cards. The longer the game goes, the better the Fountain gets.
It's also historic, which is not trivial.
Oh, cool.
You know what I mean? Like, there's different things. Like, maybe this is part of some sort of a Karn deck, and maybe this is part of... some sort of like if you're playing Tashar, Ancestor's Apostle, you know, like there's I don't know, there's a few things that care about you just having some, and it's also an artifact for powering up Improvise, so that early on it can be like a source of like an artifact that is able to accelerate your Herald of Anguish or Maverick Thopterist, while at the same time gaining you a little bit of life, and then after you've, you know, like played out your hand a bit, cash it in and keep it going.
Sure, yeah, this is like, in some strategies, this is like a mana elf also, right? Similar to that.
So another artifact, what do you think of Desecrated Tomb? 3 cost, whenever 1 or more creature cards leaves your graveyard, you get a 1/1 bat with flying.
I was thinking about where I would want this card. Like, the first thing that came to my mind, and I don't know if this is crazy or just a product of the recent standard and the cards that were being asked to play because of that, or maybe I had Dinosaurs in the Brain. Like, if you had this card and you just had Deathgorge Scavenger, like, in your deck, right? And like, oh, you're just getting a little bit extra bonus there. Because I don't think I'd side this in against other people's Deathgorge Scavenger, but maybe, like, you know, if I'm getting a little bit of extra bonus from that, or I don't know. Like, you played Bearscape at some point, I think. Like, would you play this like alongside a Bearscape? Like,
No, there's a Bearscape in Dominaria, fungal plots. So if you have fungal plots in play, you can pay 1 in a green and exile a creature card from your graveyard to get a 1/1 Saproing. So now you'll just get a 1/1 Saproing and a bat.
So is this a card that you see? I can't think of a time that I would just want to play Desecrated Tomb. Right, I can only think of a time where I would want to play Desecrated Tomb and other stuff that was pretty specialized. Right, because Fungal Plots is not the kind of card that you just play outright. Nor is Deathgorge Scavenger generally. You know, sometimes you play it in the main deck, but it's not generally a card you just play outright. Both of those are cards that you play with a certain purpose, right? Like, you're grinding somebody out, or you're just trying to get a little bit extra when you know that they're killing your stuff. Like, I don't know, like, it's not like any graveyard, right? It's just your graveyard.
Right.
Yeah, so, I mean, like, are other people aiming at your graveyard so much that you would want to play Desecrated Tomb? Like, if you're playing a Reanimator deck, like, you're like, oh, well, they might have some kind of, you know, anti-graveyard cards, like, I'll at least get a bat. Like, it's just not a pay. One time, I'm not going to pay off for 3 mana and a card in my sideboard. Like, I don't see it from that standpoint. Like, I would have to have, like, probably, like, a good reason to be removing things from my graveyard to begin with. If I wanted to play this. And it's just creatures, right? Like, it's not like anything. Like, if it's like anything, obviously, then Desecrated Tomb gets better. And what's worse than that, it's whenever one or more. So, like, if multiple go away in a single burst, you still only get one, right?
Yeah, but, like, there's a bunch of things you can do with it. Like, it's very much a combo card. Like, for instance, what if you had Gravecrawler?
Talk to me about how I would want this.
Okay, so, like, say you've got Gravecrawler where you can just cast Gravecrawler from your graveyard as long as you control a zombie. So if you had some way to get value out of your Gravecrawler, like, so the most extreme example would be like Phyrexian Altar plus Gravecrawler. If you have Phyrexian Altar plus Gravecrawler, then you just go infinite. Like, you could go, like, if you have Gravecrawler, Phyrexian Altar, Desecrated Tomb, you'll have infinite mana, infinite death triggers, infinite bats. You know, like, you can just keep looping it, because every time the Gravecrawler comes into play, you get the bat because it left your graveyard, and then when it's in play, you sacrifice it to the altar, and now you'll have a mana to replay it again, and you'll be up a bat, you know, and you'll have the mana, and it just won't cost you anything. I mean, it's a loop. And there's other ones you can do too, right? Like, there's the Gravecrawler from Amonkhet block. It only works if your hand is low, but, like, you don't need a zombie in play.
Oh, sure. I guess there's all kinds of stuff that you can, like, play out of your graveyard from. Like, there's the zombie you can just play for 2 and a B, or there's a Bloodghast, right, that comes out of your graveyard that, you know, when you play a land. I guess there's those.
And then if you want to look for other combos, I mean, like, for instance, if they end up having any kind of way to, like, I mean, I don't think that they've made anything in this space for a while, but Tortured Existence, you could just loop, right? Like, you could just discard a creature and get another creature. And the reason Tortured Existence kind of comes to mind is that with this, with SCG doing some high-level pauper tournaments, Tortured Existence put up a big finish this past weekend. And the ability to Tortured Existence, if you have to, I mean, normally the way to play Tortured Existence is in some kind of a black-green madness deck. And if you're playing Tortured Existence, now granted it doesn't work with Desecrated Tomb because Desecrated Tomb is not pauper, but if somehow they have some kind of Tortured Existence deck somewhere, I mean, Desecrated Tomb just lets you every mana you pay, you get a 1/1 flying bat, which is kind of interesting. I mean, it's not good enough for Legacy, but if they make something along the lines of Tortured Existence for Standard, that'd be interesting.
I think your main point is just that, like, there are ways to play this card in, you know, if you think broadly enough that are just not, like, the obvious something removed from your graveyard, like with a Deathcorch Scavenger, like the way I was thinking about it. And that's actually, the altar kind of just play a zombie out of your graveyard. It's much more interesting.
I think we haven't even touched on the best standard combo with it. Like, the best standard combo has got to be Scrap Heap Scrounger, right? Because you actually do.
Just play.
You get two. Well, and you get two. Because you exile the creature from your graveyard as a cost, and then you get a bat. And then the Scrap Heap Scrounger's ability resolves, so it leaves the graveyard, comes into play, and you get another bat.
Oh, wow. That's actually doubly cool with, like, Explore creatures in Kenra's then, right? Like, if you were going to play a bunch of Explore guys, which are putting creatures into your graveyard, which can either be Kenra's or be Scrap Heap Scroungers or just be fuel for them, right? Like, mid-game, you just dump a Land Werewolf into your graveyard and then use it to fuel a Scrap Heap Scrounger. That works. That's a double there, right? Or you dump a Resilient Kenra into your graveyard, play the Resilient Kenra out of your graveyard as a token creature. That left your graveyard, right? So you get a bat and a 4/4 with a boost ability.
Right.
Oh, that's cool.
And what about with Persist and Undying? Right? Like, if they end up printing some kind of Persist or Undying type of card in Standard, that'll be interesting. But even if not, I mean, maybe this card could have applications in Modern.
Yeah, I think that, for me, like, I can see there being some upside to this in fair strategies, like you've outlined right now. I don't know if I want to pay 3 mana and a slot for it, though. Right? Like, this is an expensive get to me. Are you disagreeing there? Like,
no, I mean, to me, it's going to be all about if we can come up with some kind of crazy combos with it. I think that just on the merits, it's unlikely. It's unlikely.
Because even the cool things you're talking about, there are other ways to skin those cats, right?
I'm saying that, like, if you have a combination of the, like, just good cards that make good value, like Scrap Heap Scrounger, and then maybe, like, backdoors into some kind of crazy loops, I think there's something to this card. I'd want to see what else there is available. I don't think it's, like, inherently automatically going to get there. And, in fact, it's probably not, but it is well worth exploring because it's got real chances of being, more in the stockpile space where it's got a niche home than most types of cards like this. The fact that it doesn't cost any mana to operate is the part that's really compelling to me.
Oh, yeah. That's always a bonus, right? Like, there's all kinds of stuff that gets you an advantage if you're willing to dump mana into it. But, like, mana's the thing that's expensive, ironically.
Yep. So there's a new Pilgrim's Eye, 3-cost 1/1 flying artifact creature Thopter. And when it enters the battlefield, instead of getting a basic land of your choice from your deck, you draw a card.
Well, I'm not a buyer.
No?
No.
You think this is worse than Pilgrim's Eye?
Yeah. Searching for a basic land is way better than randomly drawing a card.
Is it?
Yeah.
Like, what if you were playing a blue-red Thopter deck?
I mean, you got to punch me right where I played the Pilgrim's Eye, right? Like, blue-red deck. I mean, I think I played it because I wanted to get a land a lot of the time, right? Like,
I know, but I'm not talking about that. I'm saying, what if you played a blue-red Thopter deck?
Yeah, I guess fuel is better than mana in that situation, especially with the blue-red Thopter deck.
On Tribe too.
This is actually a mana elf in a blue-red Thopter deck, right? So,
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe
I like this card.
It's also a flying creature, right? Some versions of blue-red Thopter deck, this is like a 3/3. So, maybe.
Dude, I think this is at least as good as Pilgrim's Eye.
Well.
Dude, if you don't like that, here's a different cantrip. And for some reason, I feel like you're going to find a spot for Revitalize. This is the 1-in-a-white instant. You gain 3 life, draw a card. So it's like if you're dedicated enough that you're just always cycling Renewed Faith, well, this is a way to cycle Renewed Faith and get an extra life. You get an extra life out of it in exchange for not having the option to pay 3 to gain 6. And it can be countered, of course. But what's more...
No, it's countering. this. Like, you're in a desperate spot if someone's countering this.
You say that, but what if you just play 4 of this and 4 Renewed Faith because you're playing Lich's Mastery?
That's, of course, where my head went. Yes, maybe this will make it, man. You know what else? You could play this with Horse Tribal. Horse Tribal. Come on. At some point, they have to print so many good cards that are just screaming, play me, that, like, Horse Tribal and Lich's Mastery get playable, right? Like, they have to. Like, this card is obviously good.
I don't know that that's true. I totally don't know that that's true.
Like, Kai Buddha probably looks at this card and is just like, I would play this in 3-color control decks. I would play this in 2-color control deck. He must be thinking this when he says this.
I'm not convinced that he must be thinking that. I think he might be thinking, this is stupid. I guess I'll just Chain Whirl you again. Drop Glorybringer attack.
Yeah, he is a brutal killer of men at Magic the Gathering.
Take Vengeance. Another 1 and a white common. This one's sorcery. Destroy target tapped creature.
Oh man, if this were
assassinate for 1 less.
If this were instant, it would be so great.
This would be a messed up card if it was an instant.
Yeah, no kidding. But this is like, I mean, it's fine. I'm not excited, right? Because there's already Seal Away, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm very cool on this. I don't think it's like off the table.
No,
but I'm not optimistic about this one's chances. It's okay.
There's no Gideon's Reproach and there's no Seal Away, right? Yeah, obviously this jumps in those situations, but it's 3rd in line right now, at best.
Yeah.
There's a mono white deck, like a blue white deck would blink before they did this, right? A red white deck has many options. A black white deck has many options before they take Vengeance.
Does Demon of Catastrophes do anything for you? The 2BB 6/6 flying trample, and as an additional cost, you have to sacrifice a creature.
Yeah, actually, this is one of the main cards I wanted to talk about. I think this card is, first of all, I think it's good. Second of all, I think it's a great opportunity to just talk about how we build decks and how we cost cards and how we.
I was thinking the same thing.
How they cost cards, rather, and then how we choose cards for our decks, right? So,
yep.
So obviously, if you're just like 6/6 flying trample for 4, no other text, you're like, all right, slam dunk, right? Slam dunk. If that,
easy slam dunk,
right? If this is a Larry Nance Senior slam dunk, right? Not like a not like getting blocked slam dunk, right? So, but obviously it has this other clause, which is as an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature. And you're like, oh well, now I don't like it, right? Like, what if? And then just a litany of reasons why you wouldn't like it. But I still think it's a good card. And the reason
I don't know, I could be into it anyway, even if I wasn't doing anything.
Yeah,
but keep going.
So the thing is, right? This card is just like, it's like an armadillo cloak, right? Like, there's cards that, like, creature enchantments we play, for example, that are sometimes fantastic, right? And they're so good we play them. And this is very similar to a creature enchantment, right? Which is basically, the problem with a creature enchantment is it gives the opponent an opportunity to get card advantage if they have a point removal spell that can hit the creature, right? Same here, right? You're investing a creature to play the demon, and then if they kill it with a 1/1, then you lost 2 things for a 1/1. That's the downside. But then everything else is the original slam dunk. I think that's the deck design constraint, right?
Well, that's one way to do it. I think there's another way to do it, which is, I mean, if you play stuff, whether it's like Sacred Cat or stuff that explicitly gets better after it dies, there's plenty of creatures that when they go to the graveyard give you another creature, and sometimes the creature they give you is even bigger and better.
Oh, if you drop this on Rekindling Phoenix, what does that do?
Could be okay. I meant even just like spots where we can turn this into upside, right? Like if we steal our opponent's creature, obviously it takes a lot of mana to do that. But if we've got this in conjunction with anything that we explicitly want dead, and I'm in for this guy.
What if we play this with Angrath, right? That's not expensive if you're playing with an Angrath, right?
Yeah, you could do that. I wouldn't want to count on that as the A game, just because I think that when you're just successfully Angrathing, you're already doing a lot right.
Yeah, I mean, Angrath is so good if he's online. You know, if Angrath matters, then the opponent's probably in trouble, right? So, yeah, I don't know. You're right.
6/6 flying trample is also just like a very attractive body in a world of rekindling phoenixes and glorybringers.
Sure, I was thinking like, is there something like the 3-mana Nissa, the one that just like pumps out plants? You know that one? If there's something like that. You're just like 3-mana Nissa, pump out. You just like drop this thing. It's free, right? Like something like that, right? Maybe there's a place for it. Probably not good enough for Modern the way that I'm thinking of Modern right now. But if there's something like that, or maybe there's just a value thing, like we were talking about either the Elvish Rejuvenator or the Sky Scanner, right? Like those are both creatures that cost 3, get you a small advantage. You play this, it's basically breaking even, right? And they're just paying a down payment. You got something out of it, right? In the case of either card, but in particular the Elvish Rejuvenator, maybe it just got you the 4th mana you needed to cast this card.
Sure. Yeah, I'm interested. I mean, it's a big body, and I don't think it'll actually play this as much like Desecration Demon as the demon might look. I definitely think that viewing it as half sort of a weird super aura and half like a sack outlet for certain types of, like things where you want to sacrifice exactly one creature. Like specifically like a creature, like when you play a couple creatures that when they die give you a bonus.
Oh yeah, there's all kinds of like green and white creatures that are like when this dies gain life, right? Like that's a thing. But I think like
2 triggers revolt. Yeah, okay. But anyway,
what do you think about Patient Rebuilding?
Okay, so Patient Rebuilding is sort of, it's the latest in a long line of these enchantments that draw extra cards. It's 3 blue. At the beginning of your upkeep, target opponent puts the top 3 cards of their library into their graveyard. Then you draw a card for each land put into the graveyard this way. So to start with, you're drawing on the average just slightly more than a card a turn. Right?
Sometimes 3 cards.
Right. But on the average, your equity is slightly better than a card a turn, and we've played 5 mana draw a card a turn with drawbacks.
Well, I was thinking when I saw this,
and then it also runs them out. It's a victory condition that's putting them under pressure, even though you're drawing extra cards.
So yeah, I was thinking about that. Like, if you draw 0 extra cards that turn, like you kind of got them, right? That was kind of cool. You're at the point in the game where you're willing to pay 5 mana for something that doesn't affect the battlefield, right? Like, maybe just flipping over three non-land cards was great for you. I don't know. That's one thing.
That's a weird that's a weird logic. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, obviously, random numbers and everything. But the other thing that I was thinking about it is, I always think back to the situation where Andrew Cuneo hadn't played Pro Magic for like a long time, but he got back onto the Pro Tour originally playing that Future Sight Psychotog deck on Moto, right? And that made me want to play Future Sight. I'd never even considered playing that card before. So Future Sight was UUU2, right? A more prohibitive casting cost than this, and then you could play the top card of your library, right? That was I think, a different 5 casting cost incremental card advantage enchantment than this, but that's just where my head went. If it's good enough for Andrew, that was a different time, obviously. But you see what I'm saying there? Like Future Sight, it was good enough that they eventually named a set after it.
I don't totally know that was because of power level, but I think that Patient Rebuilding is being an enchantment means it's vulnerable to a different class of cards. I think that this is one of those spots where there's a little bit of a guessing game possible, right? Like let's say you were playing a blue-black deck. Do you have the Immortal Sun after sideboarding? Do you have Patient Rebuilding after sideboarding? Do you have a Liliana Death's Majesty after sideboarding? You know, like being able to hit from a variety of different angles is interesting, and I think that this one's most likely application is as a one-off sideboard card for control decks.
Yeah, so that's a good point, right? I think oftentimes, if you're playing against a black-green deck, and you're playing like a blue-white control deck, and you're thinking about what kind of threats you might want to have after sideboarding, you're like, oh, well, obviously I'm going to have my Teferis. Oh, maybe I'll play Karn. Maybe I'll play this. Maybe I'll play a creature. And you're playing against a black-green deck. They're always going to have their Vraska's Contempts, right? If they have Vraska's Contempt, they're going to have all their Vraska's Contempts against you, right? Just to match up with your Teferis, if nothing else. So that means they automatically have something to shoot at your Lyris if it comes to that. But with this, they might not have their Brontodons, right? Like they might, oh, well, you know, maybe I don't care about Castle. They probably would have their Brontodons, actually. Now that I think about it, they have their Brontodons. But like a red deck can't abrade this, right? Like whereas they could abrade other types of cards that you might play in a similar space.
Yeah. So what's your verdict?
I like it. I would love a universe where I could patiently rebuild. Right? I think.
Would you?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Like
I feel like you would enjoy it more if nobody else was doing it.
I would like it if I could just sit back and like maybe just play a bunch of artifacts, maybe up to and including Gilded Lotus, right? Like I play that like 3 casting cost 1 that taps for mana and more mana, the more copies of you have that guy. And then I'm accumulating permanents for the City's Blessing, so like my whole game's on the table, and every so often I cast a River's Rebuke. That's like my heaven right now for my imagination and standard, which does not look anything like how standard actually goes. There's no way I could do that right now, right? Like every single deck either would beat me up or give substantial resistance to this strategy that I've imagined. But I would love it if I could just patiently build, get the City's Blessing, and then, you know, draw cards with Arch of Araska as my payoff. You'd like that to admit it.
In my younger years, before I became old and jaded.
Really? Your first Pro Tour top 8, you were attacking with Ball Lightning.
Yeah.
So younger than that. Younger than 1996.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So, were there any other ones that really jumped out at you?
Yeah, actually, I thought that this time around, because I think this is not always the case, I think that there's a fair number of stuff from the Planeswalker decks that's probably not good enough to play in Standard, but it's actually at least interesting to talk about. I think genuinely interesting to talk about. Either from a card design space or like maybe we imagine a little bit, it's just not even that different of a universe where these cards might be pretty interesting or even good. Several cards actually from the Planeswalker decks that I thought might fill that bill.
I'm guessing Nexus of Fate is one of them.
Well, no, I was actually thinking
Not really? No?
I was thinking, like, just to start, like, Ursine Champion.
All right, so this is the 1 in a green, 2/2 that you can pay 5 in a green to Ursine Champion gets +3/+3 and becomes a bear berserker until end of turn. Activate this ability only once per turn.
Yeah, so my inspiration for thinking this one might be at least a little bit interesting to think about was Heir of the Wilds, right? Which is a highly unexciting card a lot of the time, but was highly played as 2 of or even 4 of in Abs and Aggro decks in its day because it got a payoff later in the game. Now, obviously, 6 is a lot to ask for, but here's the thing. You play Ursine Champion, it's a 2/2. Nobody's writing home for a 2/2 for 2, right? Like, it's Grizzly Bears Plus or whatever. But, like, late in the game, like, oftentimes you're just playing one of these aggro decks. You just have 6 mana and nothing to do with it. Get in there, right? Obviously, I didn't say, like, oh, definitely people are going to play this. I don't think it's so likely they're going to play this, but it's not as far off, I think, than
well, it's not really like Heir of the Wilds, though, right? Like, Heir of the Wilds was much more about the fact that it hit for 3 instead of 2, and it had Deathtouch.
Yeah, Deathtouch is just naturally having
That's
Deathtouch.
Such a different card. This card is actually just an Atarka Beastbreaker. And it's not like Atarka Beastbreaker did anything. Atarka Beastbreaker was that card from Dragons of Tarkir that was 1 and a green for a 2/2, and you can pay 4 and a green to give it +4/+4 until on a turn, but you can only activate it if you have at least 8 or more worth of creatures. 8 power or more worth of creatures. So this one's like basically just the Atarka Beastbreaker, but for a mana more, you don't have the quest. And you also only get +3/+3 instead of +4/+4. I don't think this card sniffs constructed.
All right. Can I interest you? Now, again, this isn't a whiz-bang play. I thought it was worth thinking about a little bit. Grave Waker, right? Which is 4 BB for a 5/5 flyer, right? But for 5 BB, you can return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So, 4 BB for a 5/5 flyer is not out of the realm of possibility, right? It's not even Fat Modi level, right? So we're not even talking a revised level flyer. But if you get to 1 mana more than it costs to cast this card and you have it open, I don't know. This is could be a thing. Could be a thing. Crazy?
I put it at a slim chance, but not out of the question.
Not out of the question.
Not out of the question. Pretty unlikely, but not out of the question.
I can at least imagine situations where I might want to play this card.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
All right, and the last one from this...
Dude, hold on, but just a second. What about Aggressive Mammoth? What happened to my childhood? This is just Force of Nature, but better in 3 ways.
But no horrendous drawbacks.
So 3 green for an 8/8 trample. Other creatures you control have trample.
Massive upgrade right on that one, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's as cool though.
Well, Force of Nature have some heavy drawbacks associated with it, but people probably don't know this. Pro Tour LA 1998 champion David Price qualified for the 1997 U.S. Nationals with Force of Nature in his deck.
No, I do know that, actually. I've actually a great deal of interest in the Force of Nature contingents. Everybody who's ever done well at a major tournament with either Shivan Dragon or Force of Nature, there's a lot to like there.
So you top-8 that same regionals, right? But you played Necro, so you were...
I actually, I don't think I thought I lost in the maybe I lost in the top 8 to Mono Red or something, but
you made top 8. I think that was a stacked top 8.
So
it was you, Dave Price, Dave beat Eric Lauer, I think, siding in Force of Nature against his blue deck.
The Force of Nature connoisseur of the week has got to be good man Richie Frangiosa. And congratulations, Richie Frangiosa just married his longtime girlfriend Susie Powell. And Richie also won a PTQ back in the day with Force of Nature. We'll have to make sure he gets Aggressive Mammoth upgrades. Was there? You said there's one more that you wanted to touch on, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, none of these cards is screaming Siege Rhino. Okay, let's not get crazy, but I think that they're worth. Especially Grave Workers, it's close, it's interesting, just a little bit, and this is touching on my youth a little bit, right? Riddlemaster Sphinx, right? So
get out of here.
For just twice the cost of a Mana War, you get 2.5 times the power and flying, right? So this is a 6 casting cost, 5/5 flying Mana War. Probably not good enough for anything.
Get out of here. Get out of here. You're going to cut. How many Torrential Gearhulks are you going to cut for this?
I don't even play 4 Torrential Gearhulks anymore. That card
I know, so why would you think
prohibitive to play, right? I'm just because I think it's not always about what would we play right this second, right? It's often about how do we think about things if the universe is a little bit different. Obviously, right now it's competing with stuff that's wildly better than it, right? People don't even play Noxious Gearhulk.
I would not say that it's competing.
Noxious Gearhulk is a mile better than this card, right?
Yeah.
Like a
yeah, it
mile
is.
better, right? Like,
Right, and that's not as good as they get.
it's not even as good as they get for 6. All right, so it's not interesting then.
No, it could be interesting. I mean, it looks like a fun card. I bet it's a little short.
Well,
I bet it's a little short.
All right. This is the real last one, which I actually think probably has more chances than any of them to actually see play. And I don't mean Air Elemental, which was the finishing card played by the 1997 Ohio Valley Regional Champion Worth Walpert, although that is also one of the cards that's in the Planeswalker decks. But what about Grasping Scoundrel? So Grasping Scoundrel is B for a 1/1, but he's got some other upsides. Human Pirate might have something going on as a human pirate. Like, there are some synergies you can play there. And he has another little clause to him. Grasping Scoundrel gets +1/+0 as long as it's attacking. How about this one?
Not really. It's just a reprint.
All right. I'm done then. Planeswalker decks, nothing to talk about.
Yeah, so, I think that this preview season's kind of kicked off on a weird foot. Like, it looks like a little bit of a leak situation, and that's why we're kind of seeing a disproportionate number of commons and uncommons just from the sheet. But from what cards we have seen so far, I think looking forward to this as far as core sets go. And looking forward to seeing what the rares and mythics bring.
But, even of what we've seen so far, I think we can agree Vivien Reid is going to see heavy play, probably as a sideboard.
I don't know about heavy play. I don't know if we even agree on that thing, because I'm not convinced it's going to see heavy play.
It would be the canopy thing, right?
I don't consider that to be the bar for heavy play.
But people are for the canopy thing.
That costs less?
This does so much.
I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just saying that I don't expect this particular 5-cost card. I think this is definitely one of the 5 best green 5-drops in the format. It'll see play. I think it'll see play. Okay. Maybe it's amazing. Maybe it's insane. I don't know.
So I think that card is going to be good. I think Gigantosaurus is exciting. I think Infernal Judgment is going to be played depending on how much timing is set up before a tournament. I think that I think Demon of Catastrophes will find a place to cause some catastrophes too.
To be sure, Militia Bugler is the first one on my list, but this is there's a lot of sweet stuff here.
All right, well, we will.
And that's not even talking about 2/2 zombies for 1.
Oh, well, you want to talk about reprints.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play Dredge, it's a jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind.